Okay, so far we've talked about footwear, we've talked about base layers, and we've talked about mid layers. What we're going to talk about next is extremities. So let's have a look at scarves. So the first one we have here is synthetic fashion scarf. It's nice enough for a short walk outside, but it's not warm enough, and it's not sufficiently warm when wet to be used for any expedition purposes or any hiking purposes. So for those, I would use this I've used a lot. This is alpaca wool. It's very durable, it's very warm, it would be warm if it got wet, and it's very comfortable next to the skin. So I'm perfectly happy to use this. I use this on expeditions and I use this around town. Very good scarf. This is a full merino wool scarf. It's extremely warm, it's very nice, but it's also extremely long and extremely large, which means it's difficult to close a neck around it. So wind can pass through it because it's not windproof, which means it's not actually warm enough to use on expeditions. It would be nice to wear at a camp where wind isn't an issue, but for expeditions themselves, it's no use. It would also be difficult to wear one of these when you're camping, but when you're hiking, because it would be too warm. So this is an alternative to a scarf. This is by Wednesday. I got this from Decathlon. It's very useful because I can use this to link up my base layer and a scarf with a face mask if I'm in very cold, windy conditions, or if I'm on my snowmobile. So that is useful to link up layers to make sure I don't leave any of my neck or my lower back exposed when I'm doing those activities. So this is also very useful. On the subject of face masks, this is one that I bought before I came out here. It's made of something called Wind Pro. It's very wind resistant, not windproof but wind resistant. It's very comfortable, slightly elasticated. The only reason that this doesn't see any use, except as a backup that goes in my dry bag with my gear in case my main equipment gets lost, damaged or wet, is that the nose isn't effective enough. It's not large enough to cover my entire nose, which means part of it will get exposed, and at temperatures of -20 with a wind chill, that could be critical when we're risking frostbite. So this I use for emergency uses only. What I actually use these face masks by Gator. We've got what I imagine is a neoprene strip which goes across the nose and the mouth here. The rest is all out of fleece with some Velcro at the back to make a seal. I wear one if the conditions are down to about -15, but if it gets any colder than that, then I have an additional face mask which just covers the nose, mouth and seals around the neck with Velcro straps. So the combination of two of these with a scarf underneath and the fleece neck warmer means that I have a nice seal across my whole skin above my torso. So those I use. In terms of hats, then I thought I was going to use this quite a lot. This is a mixture of possum wool and merino wool, so it's very soft. It's very nice against the skin. It feels great on the forehead and the ears, but it's not windproof in any way. So with wind constantly present here on Svalbard, then this isn't very comfortable to walk around in. So potentially I would use this under a hood, potentially I would use this when I'm not moving, but I have better solutions for those, so this generally stays at home. When I'm walking around, whether it's just walking through town or whether I'm hiking, then what I want to do is protect my ears because they're particularly vulnerable to frostbite. This hat is 50% merino wool and 50% synthetic. I was worried that it wasn't going to be warm enough. I was worried that it was going to get smelly, but it does neither of those things, so it's very effective. The inside has a band of windstopper material by gore-tex, by Gore, and this is extremely good for protecting the ears. The fact that it's not sealed with windstopper at the top means that my head can breathe. So when I'm doing high energy activities like hiking, trekking, or when I'm doing other activities outside like digging a snow hole, then this allows my head to breathe and it keeps my head just about the right temperature. So this I use all the time, every day. This is extremely good. It's actually a sailing hat by a brand called Musto. I like this a lot. So if I'm not moving around and I need something that's warmer, I don't have the issue of breathing, I want something that's going to seal. This is leather on the outside, it's called a trapper hat. It's leather, which means that the wind can't get through it. The lining is rabbit fur, and there is an additional amount of lining inside the leather here at the top. I imagine this is because it's a fashion hat, so it would be too warm if it was fully sealed with fur. I wear this quite comfortably down to temperatures of -10, -15, but if it gets colder than that, then I need to add an additional layer. It's quite tight fitting, which means that I can't put, for example, a possum fur and a merino wool hat underneath. What I can do though is I can pack the interior. I've added some Velcro patches here, which allow me to put an extra layer of fur inside. So I have created 3 little strips out of a rabbit fur necktie, which allow me to put a strip over the top, a strip over the front, and a strip at the back, which increases the thermal insulation of the hat quite considerably. And this is absolutely fine for hanging around in -25. It's very, very comfortable, very warm like that. The fur is extremely well insulating. So that is the hats that I'm using. The next thing would be gloves. Now my fingers get cold very quickly, my circulation isn't the best in the world, so I have to be very careful with my fingers. These gloves I bought, the reviews were fantastic. They are trigger mitts, which means that they have a finger as well as a thumb, so that you can pull triggers. Obviously, here we need to be watchful for polar bears. We actually need to carry rifles if we're outside of town, because there is a risk that we'll cross pair of polar bears and that we'll need to defend ourselves. So these I thought I was going to get a lot of use out of. They have synthetic fur interiors. They're supposed to be quite warm. The outer material is not gore-tex, but it is supposed to be water resistant and wind resistant. The problem is this elastication in the middle. It means it's difficult for me to get them on and off. It's also difficult for me to use liners inside, so I can't really boost the temperature of my hands inside by wearing liners, which renders these effectively useless. They're fine in mild kind of temperatures here, like -5. Anything colder than that, these are rejected straight away. I don't know if you can see that they're quite dirty, but I use these for things like building snow caves or things where I'm going to be using them a lot, because I'm considering these disposable. So that's those gloves. Let's talk about gloves first and then mittens. These are liner gloves. These are very thin. These are made out of silk. They're extremely comfortable, very soft. I imagine that they're comfortable when they're wet as well. But I've worn them maybe twice, and the Velcro has completely torn away little patches off them. They're not durable enough for me to actually use in practice, so these tend to stay at home. As liner gloves, an alternative, I thought these would see a lot of use as well. These are made out of cashmere. They've got a long wrist, so they provide insulation in case there's a gap between my cuff and my hand. But unfortunately they're too stretchy, which means I can't get a grip if I'm using them. If I've taken off my main gloves and to use these, it's because I need to use my fingers. This is extremely difficult to use. I can't even take photographs with these, so again, these stay at home. What has seen a lot of use is these fleece gloves. I only wear these when I am doing something which is intensive with my fingers, because they're durable. I can use them for taking photographs, but my hands get cold very, very quickly if there's any wind at all. I tend to use these for handling oil and petrol when I'm filling up my snowmobile. Other than that, I don't tend to use them. They do smell quite strongly of petrol, because that's all they get used for. The last pair of gloves is these. These were bought as a pair of ice climbing gloves. The interior here is lined with Kevlar, so they're virtually indestructible, extremely strong, which makes them very, very good for kind of repairing snowmobiles, or if I need to do anything like build snow caves. These are very good. I've got full dexterity because of the fingers. The outer shell here is actually made out of gore-tex, so they're fully waterproof, and they're excellent for things where you're going to be handling snow. There's going to be a degree of melting. In slushy snow, these would be extremely useful. I suspect that I'll get more use out of them when temperatures warm up in the spring and the snow starts to melt. But for now, even though I got them several sizes too big, they're too small for me to use liners because of the elastication of the wrist. The same problems with the mittens. So these I take with me on scooter trips to do mechanical repairs. Otherwise, I leave them alone. They do have some thermalite insulation in addition to the gore-tex, so they will be okay later. But for now, I don't take them. For walking around town, I wear these. They're extremely comfortable. The outside is sheepskin, and the interior is rabbit fur. The combination of the two makes that they're very, very warm and comfortable. They are fashion gloves, so the stitching isn't strong enough to be used significantly. And because they've seen a lot of use, I literally wear them every day when I'm going between the research base and my accommodation. The stitching is starting to come away, and I need to spend a few minutes repairing those this evening actually. So those see a lot of use, but I don't use these in a layering system. These are standalone for short trips outside. The layering system that I use is this. The interior is alpaca wool mittens. They're reversible. I don't really care about that. What I do care about is that the wool is very warm, it's very soft, and they fit very closely to my hand, which means I can use them as a liner glove. They only come part of the way up my wrist, so it does mean that I risk getting exposure in those parts of my wrist. But as an interior glove, these are fine. I can take photographs with these. I have enough dexterity, so I'm very, very happy with these. I use those a lot. What they go inside is these. These are Dachstein style boiled wool gloves. Boiled wool, they're knitted very large and they're reduced down by boiling to make a very, very compact wool layer. Wool means that it's breathable, so I'm not going to accumulate sweat in my hands. When these are covered in snow, that actually gives them a windproof effect as it freezes to the wool, which makes them quite practical as an exterior glove. But the wind resistance I find isn't sufficient if the winds are high or if I'm on a snowmobile and doing high speeds, so I need to put a liner over the top of these. They're not particularly soft, but because they go over the top of a soft wool layer, then that isn't an issue. Because of the length of the wrist, then these easily overlap my my mid layer. I mean that I get a seal around my wrist, so I'm not risking exposure of frostbite on those around my wrists. So those are by Orthodox, but they're the same idea as the Dachstein gloves. That's those. They slip inside these. These are British military overgloves. They are made out of a gore-tex equivalent, so they're highly windproof, they're waterproof, and they have these little rubber patches, which mean that I've got enough grip to hold onto the handlebars on a snowmobile, for example, or if I need to carry something, they have dexterity that I need to be able to use them without taking layers off. I can't do very much because between these and the oversized Dachstein gloves, then my dexterity is reduced considerably, so I often have to take these off. But as a windproof layer, as a waterproof layer to deal with snow, they're absolutely fantastic. And those are what I'm using as gloves, as my scarf, and as my hats. Thank you very much.